Stench soup.
It's the last night of summer. It doesn't matter how hot and sticky it is outside, or if you're covered in mud from a long hike up the mountain trail, there are only two things that can make camp better: ice cream for dinner and sleeping under the stars. This trip was no different. We got back to our campsite with an empty carton of Rocky Road ice cream bars and 4 marshmallows we bought at a nearby gas station. 2 for me, and 1 each for my sisters. The sky was still light out when I heard voices coming toward us through the woods on the path leading down the side of Mount Washington. At first, all I could see were 2 dark silhouettes moving across before they came closer to where we sat by the fire pit. My heart jumped as they stepped in front of us without making any noise. "You've reached the end," said one voice. "Welcome to heaven." I gasped. The man's words made my skin crawl, but his voice was beautiful and gentle. Then he spoke again. "Don't be afraid. Your daddy would have loved this place." He moved slowly toward us like a spirit who had just died too soon and found himself lost between worlds. His hair hung loose and straight over half his face. Behind him, a tall woman with her hair tied in braids stood watching. My sister Sonia turned away from the figure standing above us on the hillside, letting go of my hand as she pressed herself into my sight. But it wasn't until the moment later when both figures vanished that I finally screamed. That scream felt as if something inside me left and fell through space forever. The coldness shot down my spine so intense that I couldn't stand up or even move. After what seemed like hours, I woke up sitting alone in front of the campfire. As my eyes adjusted, I realized someone had laid a blanket over my shoulders while I slept. Even more startling than finding myself in a strange clearing was realizing that nothing around me looked familiar. In fact, everything, the trees, the mountains, the sun setting on the horizon behind us, seemed alien. When I checked my watch, I saw we'd been asleep for nearly 7 hours. I stumbled back to the tent where my sisters were still sleeping and whispered their names but got no response. For several minutes, I lay awake staring at the stars through the open flap of our tent. When the sky began turning blue and then pink, I decided to take a walk outside. I crawled out from under the tarp, opened the tent flaps, and stood looking at the forested slope. My breath caught when a deep voice called my name. "Maggie," he said again, his voice so soft I thought maybe I imagined it. "It's time to go." I shook my head to clear it, not believing what was happening. Then it dawned on me. This was no dream. Someone was here with us in the woods. Some strangers who could move unseen by anyone else nearby. But how? "You don't have much longer with us now," the stranger continued. He stepped out of the shadows and leaned toward me with both arms raised like wings as if waiting for an embrace. But this felt wrong somehow. It made me nervous when he suddenly lowered himself onto one knee beside me. With that motion came another change. His skin became dark and hard as rock, as if someone had grabbed hold of him and turned him into stone right before my eyes. "What are you doing?" I shouted, terrified at what I was seeing. The figure below me didn't seem bothered by the sound of my voice. He stayed frozen in place except for his mouth moving ever so slightly. "Your daddy sent me here to protect you," he replied. His words stopped all movement in me. Everything around us seemed to fade away. There wasn't a tree or a blade of grass left in sight. The air smelled sweeter than any fresh-cut field. All around us, there were no sounds of insects or birds or even a breeze stirring through leaves or grass. "Who are you?" I asked. "My name is Malachi." His voice sounded calm and strong and yet different from anything I'd heard before. "I am your guide." "Why do you want me to go with you?" I whispered. My heart pounded harder and louder than any drumbeat inside me. "It's time for you to go home now," he said. That was it. That was what had happened earlier at the campsite when he told us we reached the end. Welcome to heaven. I shook my head but then noticed my sister Sonia standing behind a strange man in the same spot she was last night. Her eyes met mine only for a moment. Then her gaze shifted down as if searching for something in her hands. When she finally looked back up again, her lips trembled like 2 small flowers shaking in a storm wind. Her expression changed into a look of fear mixed with horror. "What?" I yelled out loud. I took several steps toward my sister. As soon as I shouted that, everything went dark and quiet around me except for the sound of the wind whispering across my ears. In an instant, I found myself lying on the ground alone while the rest of the world moved past me and disappeared. When the darkness lifted, I opened my eyes to see that nothing had changed. The trees remained exactly where they had been before, but someone had rolled over me in their sleep. My sisters. I lay still for a long time, staring up into the sky. A few stars shone brightly overhead, and I wondered how many more times those lights might fade from sight or blink out until it all fell into oblivion. Then, all at once, the feeling inside me grew so heavy that it seemed impossible it would ever go away. Leave a comment if you'd like to hear part 2!